Okay, so I wanted to make this video on the eve of the election 2024 between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump. I was going to do an update on the market, but I figured nobody gives a shit about the market right now. So what we'll do is we'll talk about the election. I do have some thoughts on this that may or may not be interesting to you. So here goes. Now, the first thing I wanted to say is this election reminds me a lot of Reagan-Carter in 1980, where you had a similar setup in the sense that a lot of people were very upset with the way the country was going. You had the Iran hostage situation going on. Carter was viewed as handling that very poorly, and America felt humiliated by Iran, and the economy was going terribly. There was high inflation. We were in a recession. I mean, a lot of really bad things were going on. And so it's similar in the sense that, you know, Biden, before Kamala Harris came into the picture, Biden had a 78% disapproval rating. And with all the issues that occurred during Biden's presidency, which I won't go into because everybody's sick of hearing about it by this time. But very negative approval rating going into it. And then this is a little bit different because this has never been done in the history of the United States. But then when the Democrats realized that there was no way that Biden was going to beat Trump, they did a mob-style hit or a coup. And I say mob-style hit because only Tony Soprano could have done it better than Pelosi and her various henchmen, Obama and whoever else was involved in it. They put out the hit on Biden and they installed Kamala Harris. Okay, completely undemocratic. It's funny how people talk about ending democracy did something that undemocratic, but hypocrisy was never something that the Democratic Party was good at extinguishing. Let's say they're very good at hypocrisy, and they will continue to be. But having said that, you have a situation where even though Kamala Harris has come in and she's tried her best to distance herself from Biden, I think many people still view her as the incumbent, and they pin a lot of the negative sentiment about the Biden administration on her, which is understandable. So going into it, the dynamics are very similar, okay, to Carter-Reagan. And of course, in that situation, I'll come back to this later, we had a situation where Reagan had a landslide victory. I think he swept every state. I'll get back to that analogy a little bit later in the video. So that's the setup. You have a very similar situation. And now Kamala Harris comes in. She makes what I think are a series of mistakes. And the biggest mistake, and the one that I really wanted to emphasize on this video, is I think her determining mistake was selecting Tim Walz as her running mate instead of Josh Shapiro in Pennsylvania. And the reason I say that is because there was absolutely no reason to pick Tim Walz, okay? Aside from him being, in my view, a complete bumbling idiot who is completely not impressive, he comes from a state, Minnesota, which she already had in the bag. I mean, it's a blue state. Putting him on the ticket gained her nothing in the Electoral College, okay? And it's only because of the radical left wing of her party, which I think is a pro-Hamas wing of the party, and I also think is anti-Semitic, or at least anti-Israel. In order to placate them, she did not want to put Josh Shapiro on the ticket because he's Jewish. But in making that ideological decision, which was not based on logic, she made an enormous mistake. And the reason I say that is because as I look at the map, and I've looked at hundreds of analyses, both several weeks ago and present, it appears clear to me that whoever wins Pennsylvania will win the presidency. Now, Trump has many paths to winning in the Electoral College. Kamala Harris has only a few, and all of them include winning Pennsylvania. So I think her lack of having Shapiro on the ticket was a tremendous mistake, because not only is he a tremendous campaigner and very articulate, where I don't think Waltz is at all. I think he's a buffoon, and I think he's easy to make fun of with all of his ridiculous policies and tampon Tim and, you know, the whole thing. And I think he shows really terribly on the campaign trail. I think Josh Shapiro would have been far superior, and it would have given her a better chance to win Pennsylvania, which could have put her over the top if she won a couple other key battleground states. So this is a classic example of how the ideological bent of the Democratic Party and its attempt to placate the left wing of the party, which are going to vote for them anyway. I mean, who are they going to vote for? Trump? They're not going to vote for Trump. Their ideological effort to placate that wing of the party, I believe, has led to their downfall. Now, the other thing that I think will lead to her downfall in this election is the fact that, okay, she couldn't change the fact that she is the incumbent. Okay, let's face it, she's the incumbent. But when she went on The View that one time and said, basically, when asked, what would you have changed if you could have changed anything about what you've done in the last 4 years? She said she can't think of anything she would have changed.
Would you have done something differently than President Biden during the past 4 years?
There is not a thing that comes to mind.
That basically sealed her fate, because it tells everybody that regardless of how she's reversed her policies and can't answer a question and won't take a position on anything, and she tried to just, not articulate any specific policy positions. By doing that, she is basically getting painted with the last 4 years of everything that people hate about their current situation, like the border crisis primarily, and inflation and the cost of living, and how miserable the average working person's life has become under this administration. Okay? If she had articulated policy positions that presented a coherent plan that was different from what Biden did and what was different from what happened in the last 4 years, I think she would have had a better chance of winning, because let's face it, there are millions and millions of people with Trump derangement syndrome out there. And the Democratic Party has a large installed base of lunatics and some normal people who will vote Democratic regardless of who is running. They could have had a monkey in there against Trump, and they would have voted for him. So that's really where we are. It's going to be interesting to see what happens tomorrow. I'm going to be anxiously watching, and let's see if it turns out that picking Walz instead of Josh Shapiro was the fundamental thing that made her lose Pennsylvania and therefore lose the election.